So Saints Row 2022 is basically a year old now, all its major expansions are completed and the Steam release is around the corner. At launch it was slated as one of the worst games of the year by its community and critics alike, it pretty much got universal hate. But as I said, that was a year ago now and there's a much more important question at hand. In the era of games being overhauled a while after launch, is Saints Row actually any good? Is it worth buying and will you enjoy it? I hope to answer that today as I don't think it's as clear cut as we'd like. I made many reviews when the game first came out, full of hype and excitement. That has since settled down, so it's going to be nice to get my full opinion on the record. So, let's get into it. Saints Row's story has been very split over the franchise. The earlier games were grounded, and the later games pushed for fun factor over everything. So where does the reboot land in this scale? Honestly, neither. The reboot doesn't really excel in any categories. The story is shoddily wrote and the dialogue isn't great. It has very little screen time for the people you'd actually want to hear about, you know, like the main enemy factions. Its characters aren't great and the missions aren't really the best in the series either. Don't get me wrong, there are some fun missions and there's actually a couple of moments I do enjoy, but as a whole I think people tend to disregard the story in this game more so than any other in the franchise, besides, well, that one. I don't think it's a throwaway entirely, and I think there's some fun elements at play. Missions do tend to be actually quite fun to go through, but as for its actual story, it's not great, with downright bad characters and a loosely put together plot. So okay, the new Saints Row isn't a story game, but there's other elements of Saints Row 2. A large majority of Saints Row's gameplay was taken up by its activities. Ah yes, the pastime of the open world. Whether it's Fuzz, Fight Club, Demo Derby, Mayhem, or Mind Over Murder, Saints Row has always had some awesome staples when it comes to the fun side of the open world. So the question is, how does the reboot fare? The reboot has the best activities in the series. The perfect blend of crazy and casual. It's by far the most innovational game in the series. Okay, Volition, you can drop the gun, I said the thing. Being real for a minute, I'd say it's a pretty mixed bag. There's a couple you'll enjoy, whether it's trying out military tech, the classic insurance fraud, or Mayhem, but there's also quite a lot of filler. Too many activities are take a car and drive it from point A to B over and over and over and over. Going for the 100% is going to drive you insane. I do think the activities were a bit downgraded, to be honest, but I do also think there's some fun to be had here. I do think there is somewhat of a silver lining for both of these though. It's not perfect, but one thing the newer game does really well is the side mode called Wanted. These serve as mini assassination missions, and they are a blast. You have to go around taking people out the way you're told to, and it's a real true step in the right direction for the Hitman activity in the series. If you were going to get the game, these can serve as some really fun missions with some really interesting gameplay mechanics to go alongside it. Ironically, this small mode tucked away in the phone menu feels more fleshed out than the main campaign. Now let's discuss the map. Now I have a pretty heavy preference here, but I want to be as objective as possible. The map is good. It's pretty, it's unique, it's got some distinct areas with very few dead zones, it's got plenty of hidden secrets, which I will be talking about later, and it's my personal favourite map style in the series. However, it comes with some major issues. I count 4 in fact. The first one, the NPCs are so boring. Maybe they're a baby step up from 3 and 4's NPCs, but nothing special. They walk around, they use their phones, they stand by vending machines and shopping stalls, and that's pretty much it. There is some fun to be had with them, but they're pretty boring. It also doesn't help that the ped density is so damn small. I understand that the map is set in the middle of fuck knows where, but people live here, yet they're clearly all inside their houses on the Xbox 360 instead of actually roaming the streets. Maybe they're playing Saints Row 2.
Ah!
Oh, and speaking of being inside the houses, you know who won't be inside any houses? You. There has got to be less than 15 interiors, including stores, in this whole damn map. Every store besides a couple of them are damn pop-up stores. Like, come on, we want to explore this stuff. This might not sound like a big deal to start with, but the knock-on effects are very real. Remember a little gem called Saints Row 2? Remember exploring that mall, exploring the church, exploring the prison, exploring literally any building on the map, and the replay value that has coming with it? The museum, the lighthouse, the police station, stores, like come on, and yet in the reboot there's like only stores I guess, and I suppose there's a bar. Which brings me to issue 3. God damn it, there's like 3 cribs. Now look, I'm gonna hit you with a bit of a hot take. Having 3 cribs is awful in comparison to Saints Row 1 and 2, but I think the 3 cribs we get are better than the ones we get in 3 and 4. I mean, 4 doesn't even have cribs and 3 just has copy and pasted, and personally, I'd rather have a fewer amount of cribs that are unique than a bunch of copy and pasted cribs, but that's a bit of a hot take, I know. But Saints Row 1 and 2 wipes the floor with this game's cribs. It's painful. And my final big issue with it, it's just how poorly designed the streets are for its driving. In Agents of Mayhem, a game about 3 people actually know about, it has a really similar style of driving. The streets are wide and built around the arcade style, and it works great. But Saints Row shares that great driving, but it has a map that seems built for 3 and 4's driving, I imagine. Driving is one of my major compliments for the game later, but you pretty much have to drift around every corner, which can be kind of tedious. I know I'm sounding kinda harsh, and I do have a couple good points about to come up, but I just wanted to get these big ones out of the way first. So, where does the latest Saints Row excel? Well, customization for one. Now, it's debated whether this customization as a whole tops the others. I'm personally on the side of yes. I love the clothing options, the vehicle and weapon customization, and the fact you can customize aircrafts is really cool. Of course, don't get me wrong, it's perhaps not as in-depth as Saints Row 2, which is usually regarded as its competitor in this department, but I truly think this is just one of those things that's rather subjective. I can make a character I like in this game, whilst customizing a lot more as I go along, and for me it's the first time in this series I feel I have the right amount of options for it. Will you like it? I think so. But as much as Saints Row 2, it's a little hard to say. I would say even if you don't enjoy it as much as Saints Row 2, you'll still enjoy the customization because there is a fair amount of options, especially in comparison to 3 and 4. Another thing is the driving. See, I told you I'd come back to it. The driving is fun, chaotic, and downright goofy at times. Now, Saints Row has always struggled with driving, to say the least. It's been decent at times, but it's fluctuated in quality a decent amount. And for me, the Reboot's driving is my personal favourite. The stunts you can perform, the control you have, especially when mid-air, and all the cool abilities the cars can get is pretty refreshing. Again, it has its issues, especially if you don't like the arcadey feel, but if you do like that arcadey feel, the Reboot's driving ain't half bad. We also finally got cheats. Took a little long, but I'm glad they decided to get them added. They're pretty fun and they give us a decent bit of extra stuff to mess around with in the sandbox. I'd personally say they're a downgrade from the previous games, but considering we nearly never got them at all, I'm not that hurt by this news. Plus, they're still kinda pretty fun regardless, so I'm glad about that. Another thing I love about this game is the camera mode. I'm really glad we got this. It lets you capture a ton of really cool stuff as you go along, and yeah, it's just a really nice feature. Every game should really have one of these. So, let's get back to the bad for a while. Combat in this game at launch felt pretty bad. Then they patched it and it made you feel like you're using a Wii remote whilst drunk and blindfolded, whilst also playing with your toes. And then they patched it well back to bad again. I mean, I think it's probably in the best state it's been in overall, and to give it a few props, I think it's pretty unique with vastly improved AI, some cool finishes and some decent abilities you will forget exist at times. But it's not great. They traded in that loosey-goosey feeling of the older games for this lock-on style aiming, with this really annoying aim acceleration to go along with it. Luckily they fixed a lot of issues I had when it came to bugs during the combat, like enemies not taking damage, but it's still just not great to be honest. Oh, and just when you're thinking, man, this gameplay sounds kinda lackluster with a poorly done story, let me bust your balls one more extra time. Yeah, remember diversions and minigames? You know, robbing stores, being a taxi driver, becoming a paramedic, being a tow truck driver, barnstorming, performing drive-bys, hold-ups, vehicle surfing, fire truck diversions, hoeing, hostage, streaking, blackjack, poker, zombie uprising, and anything else that I missed. Pretty cool, right? Well, say goodbye to it all. Not one of those things come back in this game. You can hold people up, but they don't drop any money. Now look at that list. You don't have to be a genius to understand how missing out on all of those features detract from the sandbox in serious ways. So what is it replaced with, I hear you ask? Well, I guess there's a couple things. You can take photos of stuff around the map to unlock collectibles and stuff. There's also hidden history where you can press buttons and learn about the map and the lore surrounding it, which I'll admit is pretty cool, and I can't really think of much else. Collecting drug pallets, I guess? This segment right here is by far the most painful downgrade of the game to me. All the fun side stuff is just gone. Even if this game's story sucked, it could have at least given people a reason to play. So let's talk the DLCs. How are they in this game? My answer? Meh. They're alright. Heist and Hazardous has a pretty cool last mission with some mediocre build-ups. Murder Circus is about fun for 3 rounds and you'll never want to touch it again, and the LARP DLC has the most content and quality, but is based around a feature most people dislike. But they're fun in their own right. I won't go in depth since I already have reviews out, but if you want to go watch those, they're on my channel. So, multiplayer this time around? Sadly not, but we do get co-op. How is it? It's quite fun, I won't lie. The game feels really tailored for you and a friend just to be dicking around the map, and it is a blast, so if you want to enjoy the game, get the game with a buddy. Plus, if you're going to buy it on Steam, it is cross-platform with Epic, so don't worry, but you do have to have the Epic launcher, so hey. Now let's talk secrets and Easter eggs. How are they? Not half bad. There is a lot of stuff hidden away in this game, lots of really cool things to find, and honestly, it's probably where I had the most fun with the game. I highly recommend you don't look them up and just go explore the desert and stuff to find them. It's how I found them, and it's by far the most fun stuff to do in the game for me. I'm a little biased this time around though, because I actually found a lot of these Easter eggs first, and I'll admit, I got pretty hyped when I found them. Easter eggs are a massive step up from all besides maybe Saints Row 2. And even then, it's pretty up to standard. I love them in this game. Crib customization returns in this game, and despite it being kinda limited in comparison to Saints Row 2, it's pretty neat. I don't mind it this time around, and I actually enjoyed finding things in the open world and placing them around my HQ. Sadly, the game won't be getting mod support, which is a massive bummer for me. I really thought the modding community would thrive with this game. If I could push the S to make pretty much any decision regarding Saints Row, it would genuinely be this. Add mod tools and let the fans have some control and input to what content they have in the game. Whether we'll ever get this though, I honestly don't know. Taunts and compliments receive a pretty nice improvement in this game. We've now got far more outlandish and animated emotes, an actual emote wheel, and moving emotes, which is pretty nice, I have to say. I also really like that they added the voice pitch slider back after launch, since they knew it was something that was desirable. That's a big W in my books. Graphically, the game is by far the best in the series. Its art style is really nice, with actually decent quality. I wish they'd have had more weather options and states though, with overcast being a cheat option too. It looks really nice. I also wish options in the cheat menu regarding weather states would actually stay permanent until they're turned off, but I can live without that, I guess. The soundtrack in this game for me is pretty weak when it comes to radio stations, pretty bad choices all around, with maybe the synthwave radio station being the only one I actually find fun to drive to. But I do think the OST of the game is actually pretty nice. Good job, Malcolm Kirby Jr., you killed it again. And I guess that pretty much does it for a majority of what I want to discuss, but the question is, do I actually think the game is worth picking up? And honestly, as I said earlier, it's not as clear cut as I'd like. So I guess I'll say this. If you're looking for a Saints Row game with a deep story rooted in gang culture, with activities that are expansive and unique, and a map that has a ton of depth to explore, this game isn't going to be for you. But if you are someone who wants to buy a Saints Row game, hop on, mess around in the open world, find some Easter eggs, maybe mess around with some fun Hitman activities, make some awesome bosses whilst taking in the beautiful scenery of the map, then yeah, I guess this game does do most of those things pretty well. The game for me, when I first played it, I think I said it was something like an 8 out of 10, but that score was rooted in hype and mixed messages about things that would be returning in the near future. Right now, my score would be sitting comfortably around an overall 5, but honestly, the score I would give to certain areas of the game would both be higher and lower, depending on which areas I'm talking about at the time. The game is a decent game, but it can be considered a bad Saints Row, but that to me doesn't mean it's a complete throwaway. Fun can be had. I know I've had more than my fair share of fun, especially if you look at my playtime for this game, but it's also just not the same as the classics. But thanks for watching my video. I hope to help newcomers figure out whether this game is worth it, and fans of the AJ channel to understand how I feel about the game. If you like Saints Row as a franchise, please consider subscribing. It's free, I cover the game a ton, but anyhow, take care and thanks for watching.